Hello everyone, and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Ketubot, pages 32 through 38. Lamed Bet, 32. Eidim zomin einan tzrichin hatra'ah. The category of false witnesses, known as Eidim zomin, are people who testify in court about a matter that they really couldn't know about, because as we see later, another set of witnesses come along to the court afterwards and say, you couldn't testify about that. You were with us at a different location at the time when you claim this event happened. And the rule is we punish the Eidim Zomin in the same manner at which they tried to impose upon the original defendants. So, ordinarily, to impose punishment upon anybody in a judicial setting, it had to have been that there was a hatra'ah, there was warning given to the would-be offenders prior to their offense, telling them if you do such and such a thing, this is the consequence according to the Torah. And what the Gemara here is telling us is that does not hold true for Eidim Zomin. If you're going to testify in court in that fashion falsely, well, you're on your own. And even if we don't warn you, we can punish you. What's the logic? Well, we're not anticipating that they do the wrong thing. And moreover, the whole point of warning someone is to distinguish between a deliberate and an inadvertent transgression. Well, this is definitely a deliberate transgression because they know that they're lying. Okay. Lamed Gimel, 33. The Torah says, "Im yakum v'hitalech b'chutz al mishanto v'nikam makeh," that after a brawl, which could have been a potentially fatal brawl, when the assailant hurts the victim, and the victim then gets up on his own strength and is able to walk around, the assailant is now absolved from punishment. So the Gemara says, did you really think it was possible for the victim to be walking out in the street and the assailant, the attacker, to be executed? That doesn't make any sense. Rather, to teach you that we put the guy in prison. The attacker goes into a holding cell, and if the victim dies of his injuries at some point over the next few hours, then we'll up the charges to murder against the attacker, and we could execute him for his misdeeds. And if the victim does not die, but rather recovers, then the attacker simply has to pay a financial penalty. Now, but what's the scenario? If he was not warned, how could we ever kill the guy even if the victim does die? Rather, it must be that he was warned, and we see from here that a warning regarding a serious matter about a capital case also serves to function as an effective warning for a lesser punishment like corporal punishment or a financial penalty. Lamed Daled. Haita para genuvalo. If a person had in his possession a stolen cow that he stole a few days ago, Utavacha b'Shabbat, and he slaughtered it on Shabbos, Chayav, he is liable to pay the tashlumei hay, the 5 times financial penalty for the act of theft. Why? Isn't it true that normally only one penalty is imposed? And since this is a capital crime of Shabbos desecration, why should there also be a financial penalty if it happens simultaneously? The answer is, it didn't happen simultaneously. Because the act of theft occurred a few days ago, even before the Sabbath violation. However, if he had legitimately borrowed a cow, and then slaughtered it illegitimately on Shabbos, then Patur, he'd be exempt from the financial penalty because the act of stealing would have occurred simultaneously with the Shabbos violation, and then will apply the rule of only impose the greater punishment, namely the capital punishment. Lamed Hey, 35. Reish Lakish Amar Pater, Beferish Rib Torah Chavi Malkut Chavi Mitot. Reish Lakish tells us that the exemption from financial penalty, when we do impose makot, corporal punishment, or capital punishment, holds true not only for mazid, for deliberate infractions, where we actually do impose the corporal or capital punishment, but even in cases of shogeg, where those punishments are not put into effect. And there is a gezerah shava, which allows us to draw that comparison and to teach us the exemption in those cases. Lamed Vav. Sumchus Omer. Ein la suma tanat betulim. If a blind girl gets married, then a husband who is dissatisfied with the status of her virginity and wants to claim that she did wrong because she is not a virgin bride, he cannot lodge that claim in the court. Why not? Because the blind girl had injured herself at an earlier time, and that's how she artificially lost her virginity. So but wait a second, you could say that about any girl, not just blind girls. So well, all other girls who can see, they notice when they're bleeding at an earlier age prior to marriage, and they'll tell their mothers about what happened to them. And so the matter will be revealed and open to everyone. There'll be no ambiguity. As opposed to the blind girl, she's not going to see if she's bleeding, so she won't show her mother, so nobody's going to know. And because nobody knew, but this possibility existed, that's why at a later time when she gets married, the husband has no tanat betulim against her. Lamed Zayin. Hashvuya, a girl who was taken captive, older than the age of 3. So if a girl was recently in captivity, and at an age where she could have been pregnant, the Rabbi Yehuda says she has to wait 3 months before getting married. Why? Because she might be pregnant and we want to know who the father is. Rabbi Yossi matir la'aretz miyad. Rabbi Yossi said no, she can get married, kiddushin and nisuin right away, and we're not worried about the possibility of pregnancy. Why? Because Rabbi Yossi holds that a woman in that kind of a situation is able to use some means of contraception to avoid an unwanted pregnancy. Lamed Chet. Now Rashinit Arsavit Garsha. If a girl got betrothed and then was divorced, Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer in Leknas. Rabbi Yossi Haglili says there is no knas for violating her, the 50 shekel knas. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yesh Leknas. Rabbi Akiva says no, there is still a penalty for having violated her because she's still a virgin bride, having never been fully married. She was only with Erison. But who gets to keep the money, the 50 shekels? Kinasa le'atzma. The girl herself and not her father gets to keep the money. That typically when a na'ara is violated, the father gets to keep the money, the 50 shekel payment. But in this case, the father's out of the picture because she was already once betrothed, so she is the beneficiary of the fine. Everyone have a great week.